All right. It's 1 o'clock here. We're about to get started. Thanks everybody for taking the time out of their day to attend. Just some housekeeping stuff. We will be recording this. If you think of somebody else that would be a good fit, feel free. Check us out on socials on LinkedIn, and we'll have this available to send to other people. Yeah, welcome. Super excited about this. We've in my past few weeks, I've been talking to lots of different people, specifically in the healthcare industry, and just sort of trying to gauge what's going on in their world and how things are going. And it really came up that there's definitely some opportunity to improve processes and help cut costs, and really focus on the core purpose of what long-term care and other healthcare facilities try to provide. And I reached out to a good friend of mine, Ben Cole, over at ERP Connect Consulting, to ask if he wanted to join in. And he was more than willing to hop in and kind of speak to some of the things. Ben has been in the BC space for a while now, and has some other interesting tools that might be of interest and help make things run a little smoother in your healthcare world. Thanks, Ben, for joining us here today.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
What we'll be talking about is specific things that you can do really with minimal effort that'll help reduce that overhead. And the key theme of everything here today is going to be focusing on your core purpose, and we'll kind of set the stage here on how that actually operates. Who's this webinar for? Specifically, this is focused on those long-term care facilities. That said, there is some similarity to how different type of companies operate. If you're in the healthcare space with clinics, dentist offices, things like that, you're going to see a lot of benefit doing similar sorts of things. But we'll try to focus on the things that work for those specific long-term care facilities. We're going to be talking a lot about Business Central here, but we're also can talk about Dynamics GP, similar sorts of things that we have available for both, and we'll kind of set the stage that way. If you're a company that is still feeling like you're buried in paper, that's definitely a sign that there are some easy things that you can do to improve this. And if you've got a mandate from somebody on your team, or if you yourself have decided that you want to leverage some emerging tech to help reduce some of those costs, as you probably know, a lot has changed over the past 6 months in terms of the different tools that are available, the increased prevalence of AI tools that can really help reduce those costs and drive them to a bottom line here. So, again, setting the scene on this, why is automation important specifically in this industry? Recent study found that, over the course of 2021, there was a cost increase of 41%, while at the same time losing revenue. So, the biggest driver of that is staffing shortages. And sort of the department that I think is the easiest spot to focus on this is in the accounting department. There's an easy way to help, make those staffing shortages have a smaller effect on your business. And, from a different perspective, if you have all the tools in place, you can continue to grow your business without having to necessarily keep hiring people along the way. And those are the types of things that we're going to be focusing on here. So we talked about high staff turnover. That's a thing that is huge in the long-term care community specifically. Um, I think it's prevalent across a lot of industries, but I think long-term care is definitely being hit specifically hard on that. And then aside from just turnover being high, it's really hard to attract and attain and retain talent. So 71% of the survey respondents said that they're interested in qualified candidates, that there's a lack of interested in qualified candidates. So we want to help give you some tools that help make that process a bit more straightforward. And as I've mentioned a couple times, this relates to nonprofits, healthcare, long-term care. The more you don't have to focus on your back office processes means the more you can focus on your core mission. And that's really why I like working with these particular types of companies is, it is for a specific good cause. And I think, making things more simple and easy to do is a great way to allow a greater focus on what actually matters, which of course is going to be those patients and people in your facilities. So, Ben, you can probably speak to this a little bit here too. People know that they're not doing things in the most optimal way. A lot of companies I talk to are like, borderline embarrassed that they're like printing emails and things like that. I'm sure you encounter people like when people come to you, Ben. Is there like an awareness that they need to make a change and just don't know how? Or do you spend a lot of your time just like, teaching people that these problems exist and trying to like fill that need? I'm not sure if you have any specific cases that come to mind about that.
Yeah, when talking to people, I would say that most of the time they know they can probably be doing things better, more efficiently. The issue is
Mhm,
they don't always know how, or there's too much. There's too many things, too much noise in terms of like AP automation, what we're doing, AR automation, reporting. Like there's so many different tools. It's kind of stressful sometimes to pick the right one, right? So I think what is very helpful is working with people who know kind of the pros and cons of different tools or how different
mhm,
tools can work in your benefit, because like you said, like we have a lot of things that we do to help, but I realize those aren't the right fit for everybody, right? So even when
mhm,
I'm selling our tools to people, it's like, okay, yeah, here are some other things that could help you as well. So I think there is a lot of noise, and that's kind of the overwhelming piece of it sometimes, that people are aware that there's a problem, but they don't
mhm.
necessarily know how to fix it. And then the other big thing that I see is prioritizing things and finding the time, right? Like everybody already has 40 plus hour a week job that they're doing. So to say, okay, let's take 2 days off and implement this can be really hard. A lot of the times the people I see that are kind of gung-ho about it are some of the smaller companies, right? That maybe the person who's doing the initiative is one of the owners or somebody who is like willing to take a Saturday to do it, right?
Yep.
Those are the people that are gung-ho. A lot of people who have to take a Monday or Tuesday off to do it, right, and kind of delay things, that's a little bit harder. But we've done it enough times that we can build an efficient plan to do it and try to get things up and running as fast as possible, or spread it out over a few weeks where you do an hour or two a day, right? Because those are really the biggest kind of barriers to entry. So
Yep.
efficiency does take some upfront work, but it's kind of all about the ROI, or the kind of return on what you're going to get in terms of the time to value, right? So how long is it going to take to see an incredible investment on this? And a lot of times you do spend time up front and you don't get
Mhm.
the return for 2 or 3 months, but then for those 2 or 3 months, you're getting return for the next 5 years of automation or 10 years for automation, right? So it does pay off.
Really
It's all
endless,
it's
right? Yeah.
it's all, yeah, it's all the investment. It's kind of all the investment up front, right? If you invest $1,000 in the stock market, you're not going to get rich next month, but in 30 years, it'll add up and it'll compound over time. So that's the easiest thing I compare it to. It's like I always
Mhm.
tell people, like, get 1% better every day and it will compound on itself. So if you can get just a little bit better with your ERP or your operations, right? You're not going to see the effect or the change tomorrow, but you'll see it in a few months, and then you'll be so thankful that you did.
Yeah, the thing I always see is the companies that show up that are motivated to make a change usually means they hired somebody who worked for a different company that
Yeah,
already had these tools in place and
that
they're
too.
super motivated. So it's if you don't have that particular situation, you do sort of have to take the initiative yourself and be like, okay, we can make these changes, we can improve things, we can invest that time up front. Um, and hopefully get great results. But the thing that I find too is people sort of view, like you said, there's a million different things that you can do, and it's hard to know exactly what will give you the bang for your buck in terms of investment in hours. And that's really what sort of the focus of today is these are like the specific aspects of things that I've seen specific like over the years that aren't huge projects that aren't, you have to do a giant map of everything and figure out how your processes work. There are some simple things that you can do that will make quick improvements that'll have almost immediate impact. There's a little bit of investment on it, but think about the low hanging fruit of improvements that will give you the biggest benefit with the least amount of effort. And like we talked about, people know that what they're doing is not the optimal way to do things. This is sort of a list that we can sort of present ahead of time, but I'll dive into some specific examples as time goes on in this session. But one of the main things is that people always come to me is they have a person on staff who is just sitting there all day, every day, and their entire job is basically to key in invoice data that they're receiving from their vendors. With the huge change of tools that are now available with how good AI is getting, that is something that I think every firm can add into their process, like an automated way to capture that invoice data. And once you've got that set up, it should work in perpetuity and should really improve, the efficiency of your AP department or accounting department in general from end to end. So I'll talk about some examples on that. Another big one is this is the one that people are probably most embarrassed about when they tell me is that they get a bunch of emails with PDFs in them for their invoices, and then they print every single one of them off. They put them in boxes and then they ship them around the country to get their physical approvals. If you're doing that, there's probably a better way, but it's not always immediately apparent what that better way is because, just sending emails to people to get approval can be a nightmare on its own. So there's definitely something that we can do to help improve that in a fairly simple way. Um, Obviously, lack of visibility is a huge thing that can help you catch things that you might not even know exist, and that's primarily what I brought Ben here to talk about today is visibility in financials and the invoicing and statements. So on the financial side, um, I guess what types of things? How do you know that you don't have the visibility that you need? Part one and two, like what are some of the benefits of increasing that visibility to help things run smoother?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just kind of making sure all the checks and balances are in place, right? So, one of the most important things that I've found is just kind of making sure that like sub ledger and general ledger kind of activity. It seems like something stupid that you think, oh yeah, that's always in check, but
Mhm.
that's one of the first telltale signs that things are maybe not working as optimally as possible, and then just kind of consolidating everything and making sure it's in one spot, right? So that I don't have to go over here to get AR, I don't have to go over here to get AP, I don't have to go over here to get my income
Mhm.
statement and then somewhere else to get my cash flow, right? Like that's why a lot of people are investing in some like dashboarding tools, whether they're embedded
Mhm.
or they're external with Power BI, these kind of fun things, right? I don't really care how you do it, right? I've made some things that I like when people use them, obviously, because that means we get to work together. But I would just say doing anything is helpful, right? And
Mhm.
kind of getting that consolidated view. And one of the one of the big things I see is people either underdoing it or overdoing it, right? So there's that fine-tuned middle
Yep.
spot, right? There's certain people who just like every month end, they're always trying to rebuild their income statement and balance sheet and like some very basic things. And then you have other clients who report on 100 different metrics. And to me, if you're not going to do anything with it, don't track it, right? Is kind of my general rule. Like if you're tracking it, I always ask them, okay, what action are you going to take if this is good, and what action are you going to take if it's bad? And they're like, well, we just want to see it. If you're just seeing it, like it doesn't really benefit you at all, right? If you see like we'll get into like day sales outstanding when we talk about invoice and statements, right? But like if you're looking and say, okay, our day sales outstanding is 29, okay, what does that mean to you? Oh, it means we're doing all right. Okay, do you want to get it better? You want to get it down to 25? Okay, let's try to get it to 25 and see how we keep it at 25. Those are the kind of things like, okay, these are metrics we can track that we can then track too, right? You have to have a goal. You have to always try to be improving
Mhm.
and get a little bit better. So my big goal there is always when looking at these dashboards, how are you going to actually take action on them? But again, kind of going back to it, it's you got to start with something. You got to make
Yep.
sure that it kind of ticks and ties, and then from there you can expand on it and say, okay, now I'm going to take some other metrics that we can month by month track,
Mhm.
actionable measures on it, right? And it doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? It could be something very, very simple, like you want to increase cash flow, decrease
Mhm.
DSO, get AP processed quicker, close in 7 days instead of 10 days, right? Like all these little
Mhm.
things that do one a month, get better at one a month or one a day, and over time, it can go back to that original thing you talked about, which is the people side of it, right?
Yep.
Good people, especially, are really hard to find. They're really hard to keep. So the more you can automate and let those really good people focus on value add activities rather than keying stuff or making sure an invoice went out, those are the things you want to focus on, right? Because you can always find people to key stuff in, but that still leads a lot of risk of turnover and things like that. And turnover, as we all know, can be very costly. So trying to avoid as much of that as we can.
Yeah, that's a good framework for this. I like that, these are the obvious things that we can improve upon, but the advantage of the increased visibility is you can find those other things that maybe aren't so obvious, right? Once you get all the low hanging fruit, get everything like optimized in a way, better visibility is going to lead you to find things out about your organization that you might not it might not be super obvious without those dashboard and reporting tools. So I think that feeds into the other things that might not be on this list, but without that visibility, you're going to struggle to if you don't address the biggest things first, you're going to struggle to find the smaller things that can also have benefit.
For sure.
um, and then the other thing that I think is easy to fix, especially on the accounts payable side, is basically an entire payments process. Paper check approval is something that can easily be improved upon with some automation tools, and starting to move towards an ACH payments of those vendors has many cascading benefits. It's faster, it's more secure. Your vendors like it more. It reduces physical costs. That's one less piece of paper you got to print out. So there's tons of benefits on that. So we'll try to sort of drive into some specific examples of these two. In my experience, if you're thinking, all right, I need to increase my efficiency on the AP department, where is the single point of entry that I think offers the biggest benefit? For me, that is invoice capture. It's the easiest starting point. It doesn't require a ton of setup, at least in the way that we architect it. And once you've got that data captured and in a system, that opens up your other opportunities. We talked about printing and shipping boxes around. If you can't capture the invoice data at the start of this process, you can't do those other two things. So for me, that's like if people just ask, all right, I don't know where to begin. What's the easiest thing? What's the start? For me, invoice capture is the optimal thing to start with. And to tie it into like a real world company that I've worked with in the past on this, uh, company called First Atlantic Healthcare, based out of Maine. In the time that they've been using our Fidesic system for invoice capture, they've been able to grow from 19 to 60 locations. They've gone on sort of a acquisition and growth spree in the past several years. And the interesting thing about this is they were able to do this without growing their accounting team. So as it stands today, they're processing 4,000 invoices a month, which if you've ever keyed an invoice into a ERP system, whether that's Business Central or GP, yeah, that's a lot of work on its own. 4,000 a month is pretty much a full-time job, and they've been able to fully automate that capture process using our Fidesic capture, and they've been able to grow from 19 up to 60 locations, which for me, growth without having to add increased staff is a sign that you have actually fixed something, you have actually made improvements to your process. And one of the reasons that we've been able to do that is our OCR system, our data capture system, is able to read location information and use that as a part of the capture. So we can dynamically GL code things, get it to the correct person based on those locations, which is normally a spot where other invoice capture can fall short. If you don't capture that location info and parse it correctly, you still have to manually route things and send them around and backfill data, which we always want to avoid. So that's a real world case that I think is useful. To dig into the financial dashboard a bit more, Ben, if you want to give some more insights onto sort of, I guess, what the main goal of this is, and sort of more directly what sort of features we have that could, help streamline things.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said earlier, kind of the get a one-stop shop approach, right? So, I've got the goal there as the last bullet point. I won't read through everything, but kind of the goal, like you said, right? We're trying to monitor the health of
Mhm.
your company or of your organization, and then also be able to access the key information as easily as possible, right? We want to make it easier so that you can go in and out. You don't have to be kind of searching for everything. You have everything on a consolidated view, and you can kind of personalize that to say, okay, we want to see like what our that bottom graphic is example of our AR or AP. They kind of look the same, right? We can see things by aging
Mhm.
bucket, who owes what's your kind of like detail down there at the bottom. So what you were just talking about after you process it is one step of it, and that's great. You have it in your system, and you have it captured now. But then how do we keep people accountable on the AP side to actually pay our vendors, and then on the AR side to make sure we're following up with our customers in order to make sure that they pay, right? Or our
Mhm.
clients or whoever it might be, right? But making sure that that cash is coming in. And I think going to your earlier point, Kevin, you said 4,000 invoices a month. If it takes 2 to 3 minutes to manually process an invoice. You said it's like almost a full job. That's literally a 40-hour a week, if not more,
Yeah.
job of literally keying things in. So if you can have a system do it, right, you can completely repurpose maybe the person that you had doing that to then look at these kind of things, right? To say, okay,
Yes.
I'm not spending all of my time typing it in. Now I have more time to analyze, are our vendors getting paid on time? Are there any discounts, vendor discounts that we can be taking advantage of that we're not getting currently that can help increase
Hmm.
cash flow and, and reduce costs, which again was one of the things you had in, I think, your first slide, right? Costs are up, revenue is down. Those are both bad things. So how can we improve? How can we improve both of those, right? If we can take advantage of vendor discounts, maybe we're not taking advantage of them because we don't have any insights if we're like if we have the availability to take them or not, right? So the whole goal behind the financial dashboard is get more visibility into some of these things, make sure that your system is healthy with those balance checks, make sure you
Hmm.
can quickly get into your financials, see your AP and AR to make sure you're taking advantage of discounts, make sure you're paying people on time and make sure you're getting the cash in the door. And then ultimately, right, cash is king. So let's make sure those cash balances are healthy. Let's make sure everything checks out. And let's make sure that we're looking at our future cash forecast to make sure that our revenue trends are higher than our burn rate, right? All just things that sound simple, but I'm always shocked when I talk to people and they're like, no, yeah, our income statement and balance sheet looks fine. Cash, I have no idea. Yeah, I think
No
we're all
idea.
right. I'm like you have no idea if you're going to run out of cash in 4 months. Like that's not a good position to be in. Hopefully you're not going to run out, but it's good to know if you have too much cash, right? That's another problem. Like if you
Yeah.
have too much cash that you're not investing, and you're just sitting on it, like that location that went from 19 to 60, um, they had a ton of probably extra cash sitting around that they were able to
Hmm.
invest in and grow. Do something with that cash. Don't just let it sit there. So a lot of
Yeah.
different things. I mean, you can look at anything, and make improvements. So I think that's
And for sure,
the
I
main
think
goal.
this why I love this financial dashboard, it speaks to the like greater shift that's happening in the whole accounting world, which is I feel like not that long ago people perceived, especially accounts payable, is just like that's the act of keying in transactions. And as that gets increasingly automated and we can add tools that do that, this becomes the job of the AP accounts payable person is to do analysis, figure things out, find ways to save money. And the more info you have, the more powerful you can be in that role, which can give you things that you can bring back to, your executive team and say, we saved all this by paying faster. We saw these expenses that were out of control. Analysis and actually doing some critical thinking on that, I think, is the way that hopefully accounting generally is going to be going. And without that visibility, you're going to struggle to have it. Then with long term care and anywhere that is actually actively has a recurring customer base, I think getting your invoice and statements process really dialed in is something that's super important. um, Obviously we know that without people paying you, you don't really have a business. So the more you can streamline that process, the better things will go. I'm not sure if there's any other extra details you want to add into why this is so important, Ben.
Yeah, again, kind of going off your example on the AP side, on the AR side, it's just as important. If you had 4,000 invoices a month you're trying to get out to your customers,
Mhm.
I really don't want anybody on my staff or my client staff to be clicking that button 4,000 times or printing it out 4,000 times and making sure it gets in the envelope off to the right person, right? So the whole idea behind invoice and statement delivery, or why we created it, right? Again, I always start with the goal at the bottom. Even though it's at the bottom, I'm going to start with it, right? We want to decrease our day sales outstanding, which is going to naturally increase our cash flow, right? And then it jumps into, okay, how do we do that? Well, we're going to automate everything. We're going to automate your AR process. We're going to automate how those emails
Mhm.
get to your customers. We're going to also automate how this scheduling of statements gets to your customers, right? So they're going to get the invoice on one day. They're going to get the statement maybe at the end of every month. It's going to show them everything they owe. It's also going to attach all the invoices that they might have open. If they have something that's past due, we can automate reminders. We can automate the recurring invoices to post, release, send automatically. So you don't have to have anybody doing this. You could
Mhm.
literally every single month have $1,000, go send an email out. Hopefully they pay you. If they don't pay you, you're sending statements, you're sending reminders. So it offloads all of that. And then again, whoever was doing that historically can now analyze the outliers. So, okay,
Yeah. why
The
are they
sys
past due, right? Like,
Exactly, yeah. So the system's gonna do the job for you of reminding people, and then, if somebody's still late, hopefully the system gets them, and, they'll pay within 10 days or something like that if they're late. So those types of things will get most of your customers to
Mhm.
do what they're supposed to do, and then all you need to do is, focus on that 2 to 4% that's really the outliers who are the bad eggs that you actually need to physically personally follow up with. Everybody else will get taken care of by the notifications, right? And I think everybody these days reacts very proactively or very well to notifications, right? If you get like a notification pop up on your phone or an email or something, you're more likely to take action than if it's just sitting on your to-do list, right? So by actually popping something up in front of them saying, "Hey, you're 5 days late," they're going to be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, like psychologically, they're like, I'm late, I need to do something about it," rather than if it's sitting on the to-do list just saying, "Hey, get around to paying this." It's going to take them longer, right? So this actively tries to, again, metrics we can track, decrease our day sales outstanding maybe from 30 to 20, like we said earlier, and increase cash flow. Now, that cash flow statement and that future cash forecast, that line should be going up or at least improving if it's going down, right?
Yeah.
So those are things we want to focus on.
And with a financial dashboard, you can actually see that that's happening. You won't be
Exactly.
blind to that as well, right? So all of these things really do sort of interconnect with each other, and get that easy stuff and get that visibility to figure out who those customers are that you need to figure out with. Um, on the payment side of things, this is another easy thing to improve upon. I think using our tools. The example that I have is a dental organization, but with their payment processing, which if you've worked in AP, it sounds like it could be a nightmare in terms of actually managing all of this. But since they have so many like roughly franchise type organizations, they're actually issuing payments every month out of over 400 bank accounts, and they're doing that all through a single batched based process using our system. So the old method on this would be, you got to make sure you got your right check stock loaded in, you got to print it, you got to upload individual ACH files to your banking. Another full-time job that can be essentially automated completely. So they decide what they want to pay, upload it up to our system. We directly send those ACH files to the bank. So that file will be generated, delivered in a secure manner. That's one less thing that a person has to do. And we also have outsourced paper check fulfillment. So everything that can't be paid via ACH will go out by paper check. They don't have to manually do that process either. That's all handled by our system. And every paper check that we send out is going to have information that loops back to try to drive those vendors towards that ACH adoption. So if you're not sending ACH payments at all currently because it's too complicated or you don't know exactly how to do it, this is an easy area for improvement. Giving your vendors a way to opt in for ACH is another huge thing that most people don't think about. There's a better way than calling them and begging them to give you their bank account information. You can set up systems to do that and really streamline that whole process. And the important part from our system is we can have all these different bank accounts and we can do that all through a single process. So, from a payment approval perspective, you don't have to worry about the fact that they're coming from 400 different accounts. If you want, you approve what needs to be approved. We will sort it out into the correct spots. We'll deliver all those files. And again, another opportunity that is probably a potential full time job that can simply be automated using the different tools here. So that's essentially what I was hoping to get through. So, I mean, again, the important thing on this is you already, if you're watching this, you probably already know the situations that are causing you problems, causing you slowdowns, and maybe something's a bigger issue than something else on this list that for your organization needs addressing first. That's great. These are just like the key things that I think are the obvious choices to kind of get things started. And once you start doing this, it gets easier and easier. You identify other areas. Once you got that financial dashboard, you can see other areas that could potentially be improved. But it all starts with actually deciding to go on that journey and say, okay, we're going to invest the time. We're going to find these things that are obvious improvements, and we're going to, work with somebody to help us figure that out. And on that note, Ben and I are definitely available to talk about these things. If anything, stood out to you specifically and you want to reach out to us, if you're watching the recorded version, we'll pop up our contact info here, but we'll send everybody who attended here a follow-up email to give them the option to reach out to us direct as well. But that's really it in terms of what I was hoping to. I always like to keep these short. Anything closing words you want to add here, Ben?
No, really appreciate you having me today, Kevin, and just hope everyone takes a page out of the playbook that we kind of laid out today and asks the right questions if they're interested in these types of automation efforts. Like I said, get 1% better every day if you can, and it will quickly compound on itself. So that's kind of my words to the wise for
I
today.
love that. 1% a day. That's you've been reading the same books and podcasts that I have a
Probably,
feeling based on that. So
for sure.
all right, thanks everybody, and take care.
Thanks, everybody.